I thought it was just another Monday morning executive strategy meeting at DataCore Solutions. I'd been their VP of Client Relations for 7 years, building relationships that brought in millions. The new CEO, brought in 3 weeks ago by private equity investors, dimmed the lights for a presentation. Then my own face appeared on the screen alongside my full salary breakdown, $286,000. He told the 19 executives in the room that I was overpaid by 35% above market benchmark. I felt my face burning as everyone stared. Derek Paulson stood at the front of that conference room like he owned not just the company, but every person in it. The presentation slide behind him showed my compensation package broken down into components I'd earned through years of sleepless nights and weekend calls with panicking clients. Base salary, annual bonuses from the past 3 years, company car allowance, healthcare benefits, even my professional development budget, the $2,000 I'd used last year to attend industry conferences that directly resulted in 3 new client acquisitions. He clicked to the next slide. Charts and graphs materialized, comparing my compensation to what he called industry standards. The numbers were designed to make me look greedy, excessive, unreasonable. Every bar graph seemed to scream that I was taking advantage of the company's generosity. I sat frozen in my chair, third seat from the right, facing the screen that displayed my financial life to 19 pairs of eyes. Some of those eyes belonged to people I'd mentored. Others belonged to competitors within the company who'd been waiting for a moment like this. I noticed Jason Weber 2 seats down, barely suppressing a smirk. Jason had been angling for a larger territory for months, dropping hints in meetings that my division could be managed more efficiently. Derek's voice carried that particular tone of manufactured concern that made my stomach turn. He talked about fiscal responsibility and market alignment like he was delivering a sermon on corporate virtue. He mentioned how the private equity firm that now controlled DataCore expected lean operations and optimized compensation structures. Then he got specific. He proposed cutting my salary by 28%. Eliminating my performance bonuses entirely, putting me on a 90-day performance review to determine if I was worth keeping at all. My hands started trembling in my lap. I pressed them flat against my thighs, willing them to stop shaking. 7 years of my life flashed through my mind. The night I spent in a hotel in Cleveland during a blizzard, on the phone until 3 a.m. with Apex Financial's IT team because their integration was failing and they were threatening to terminate their contract. The weekend I gave up attending my best friend's wedding because Bridgewater Manufacturing needed an emergency presentation to their board. The hundreds of early mornings and late nights, the relationships I'd built through genuine care and expertise. My division generated $37 million in revenue last year. $37 million. I had 12 people on my team who looked to me for leadership and guidance. I had clients who called my cell phone directly because they trusted me more than they trusted DataCore as a company. And this man, who'd been here 3 weeks, was reducing all of that to a number he considered too high. Derek clicked to another slide showing his proposed organizational restructure. My division would be absorbed into Jason's territory. I would report to Jason instead of directly to the executive team. The humiliation was so carefully designed, it felt almost artistic. He turned to face me directly. The room's attention shifted like a physical weight. 19 faces, including Derek's, waited for my response to this public dismantling of my career. Every face in that room watched me. Some looked uncomfortable. A few looked curious. Jason looked triumphant. Something inside me cracked, but it wasn't breaking. It was clarity, crystallizing into perfect, sharp focus. I stood up slowly. The chair made a small sound against the floor. I closed my laptop with a soft click, picked up my bag from beside my chair, and looked Derek straight in the eyes. My voice came out steady and clear. No trembling, no emotion, just simple fact. I resign. Effective immediately. I walked toward the door. Derek's voice followed me, something about hasty decisions and professional courtesy, but I was already in the hallway. My heels clicked against the polished floor as I headed to my office. By the time I reached my desk, my phone showed 3 missed calls. HR, Derek's assistant, someone from the executive team. I ignored all of them. Instead, I opened my laptop and began forwarding files to my personal email. Performance reviews where I'd received the highest possible ratings. Commendation letters from clients. Thank you notes from team members. Everything that proved my value. Everything that was mine, not Datacorp's. Marcus, my assistant, appeared in the doorway. He was 26, brilliant with details, and had been with me for 3 years. His face was pale. What happened in there? Everyone's talking about it. I kept forwarding files, my fingers moving across the keyboard with mechanical precision. I quit. You what? I just resigned. Effective immediately. I pulled open my desk drawer and started removing personal items. A photo of my mother. The glass paperweight my team gave me last Christmas. My favorite pen. Marcus stepped into the office and closed the door behind him. Because of the salary thing? Rosemarie, you can't just walk away. Watch me. Other team members started appearing. First Sarah, then David, then Jennifer. They clustered in my doorway, confusion and worry written across their faces. Word was spreading through the office like wildfire. My phone rang again. Derek's assistant, persistent. I declined the call. I packed faster. Years of my professional life fit into a single cardboard box I found in the supply closet. It felt both pathetic and liberating. Everything that truly mattered, all the relationships and knowledge and expertise, couldn't be packed in a box anyway. It lived in my head and in the trust I'd built with clients over years of proving myself. 20 minutes after walking out of that conference room, I carried my single box through the Datacorp offices for the last time. People stared as I passed. Some called out questions I didn't answer. I made it to the elevator, rode down to the parking garage, and loaded the box into my car. My hands didn't start shaking until I was on the highway, 10 minutes into my drive home. That's when reality hit like a physical blow to my chest. I had a mortgage payment of $4,200 due in 3 weeks. Car payments, insurance, credit cards I'd been steadily paying down. And my mother, living in Meadowbrook Assisted Living, where the monthly cost was $12,000 because she needed memory care and round-the-clock nursing for her advancing Alzheimer's. I pulled into a shopping center parking lot because I couldn't see the road clearly anymore. I gripped the steering wheel and stared at the dashboard, doing math in my head that didn't add up to anything good. What had I just done? I'd walked away from financial security because a man humiliated me in a meeting. I'd let pride and anger make a decision that would affect everything. My mother's care, my home, my entire future. I sat in that parking lot for 40 minutes, watching people go in and out of a grocery store, living their normal Monday lives while mine fell apart. Tuesday morning felt surreal. I woke up at 6:30 out of habit, then remembered I had nowhere to go. No meetings to attend, no crisis calls from clients, no team to lead. I made coffee and opened my laptop at the kitchen table. 17 missed calls, 43 emails. 6 were from clients. I opened them with a sense of dread that proved entirely justified. Marianne Chen from Apex Financial Group. Rosemarie, I heard through our account manager that you left Datacorp. Please tell me this isn't true. We have the product launch in 3 weeks, and you're the only one who understands our integration requirements. Call me immediately. Tom Bridgewater from Bridgewater Manufacturing. Your assistant said you resigned? What happened? We're in the middle of the implementation phase. Who's taking over our account? 4 more emails echoed similar panic. These were relationships I'd spent years building. These people trusted me personally, not just DataCore as a company. But the email that made my stomach drop was from Patricia Hoffman, the lawyer I'd consulted once before when reviewing my employment contract. I'd forwarded her my contract on Monday evening, in a moment of anxious foresight. Her response was brief and devastating. "Rosemarie, we need to talk about your non-compete agreement. Call me this morning." I called at 8 o'clock. Patricia's voice was professional but concerned. "I've reviewed your contract. The non-compete clause is extensive and probably enforceable. You're prohibited from working in enterprise software for any competitor within 500 miles for 18 months. I closed my eyes. How enforceable is probably. In this state, with this type of role and compensation level, very enforceable. You had access to proprietary information, client relationships, strategic planning. A court would likely uphold it. So I can't work anywhere in my industry for 18 months. Not for a competitor, no. You could potentially work in a different industry, or for a company that doesn't compete with DataCore's services. I thought about my mortgage and my mother's care facility, and the math that was already impossible. What are my options? You could try to negotiate a release from the non-compete with DataCore, but given how you left, I doubt they'd agree. You could wait out the 18 months. Or you could fight it in court, but that would be expensive and time-consuming, and there's no guarantee you'd win. After I hung up, I sat staring at my kitchen wall, calculating. I had approximately $93,000 in savings. It sounded like a lot until you divided it by monthly expenses. Mortgage, utilities, car payment, insurance, food, and my mother's facility. 4 months. Maybe 5 if I was extremely careful. Then what? My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Derek called emergency meeting. Blamed your unprofessional departure for creating chaos. 3 of us got reassigned to Jason's division. Derek's personally taking over your client accounts temporarily. It's a disaster." I felt a flash of vindication followed immediately by guilt. My team didn't deserve this chaos. My clients didn't deserve incompetent leadership. But what could I do? I'd signed a non-compete agreement when I was younger and more naive, never imagining I'd need to escape. Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang from an unknown number with a local area code. I almost didn't answer. "Rosemarie? This is Thomas Brennan from Quantum Systems." I sat up straighter. Quantum Systems was DataCore's biggest competitor, the company we'd been racing against for market share for years. Thomas Brennan was their CEO, a man I'd never met but whose name I knew well. "How did you get my number?" "Industry contacts. Word travels fast in our world. I heard about what happened at DataCore on Monday." "I see. I also heard that Derek Paulson is an idiot who publicly humiliated one of the best client relations executives in the business." His voice was direct, almost blunt. "I'd like to meet with you. Tomorrow, if possible. I have a non-compete agreement." "I'm aware. My legal team thinks we can challenge it. Derek's public disclosure of your salary in front of 19 people could constitute a hostile work environment and constructive dismissal. That might invalidate the non-compete." My heart started beating faster. Might? Nothing's certain in law. But we have good lawyers and a compelling argument. We agreed to meet Thursday afternoon at Quantum's offices across town. That night, I couldn't sleep. I researched quantum systems, reading everything I could find about their company culture, their clients, their growth trajectory. They were smaller than DataCore, but growing faster, more innovative, less weighed down by corporate bureaucracy. Thursday morning, I dressed carefully in a navy suit that made me feel armored and professional. Quantum's offices were in a modern building downtown, all glass and steel and open space. So different from DataCore's traditional corporate aesthetic. Thomas Brennan met me in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He was in his early 50s, gray hair, sharp eyes, the kind of person who listened more than he talked. We spent the first 20 minutes discussing the industry, the market, the changing landscape of enterprise software. He was feeling me out, seeing if I was as good as my reputation suggested. Then, he got to the point. 5 of your former clients have already reached out to Quantum asking if you work here. I kept my face neutral. Which clients? He named them. All major accounts, collectively worth about $16 million in annual revenue. They're unhappy with the transition at DataCore. Apparently Derek and someone named Jason have been handling the accounts personally, and it's not going well. Thomas leaned forward. They want to switch to Quantum, but they won't do it unless you're here to manage the relationship. Because of the non-compete, I can't officially work those accounts even if I wanted to. Which is why we need to be creative. He slid a folder across the table. I'm proposing a consulting arrangement. You'd advise Quantum's team on general client management philosophy and industry trends. Nothing that directly violates the non-compete. No direct client contact. Just training and strategy. And the pay for this consulting role? $75,000 annually, while we challenge the non-compete in court. It was barely a third of what I'd made at DataCore. It wouldn't cover my mother's care facility and my mortgage combined. Thomas must have seen the calculation happen on my face. If we win the legal challenge, you become chief client officer here. $350,000 base salary plus equity. Full benefits. Your own team. But if we lose, you're stuck in the consulting role. And DataCore might still sue you for working with us at all. How long would the legal challenge take? 4 to 6 months, minimum. I didn't have 4 to 6 months of savings. I need to think about it. Can I have until Monday? Of course. But Rosemary, those 5 clients are making decisions soon. If you're not here, they'll probably stay with DataCore despite being unhappy. This opportunity has a narrow window. I drove home in a daze, running scenarios in my head. None of them ended well. Friday morning, I received a certified letter. My hands shook as I signed for it. The envelope was thick, official, terrifying. I opened it at my kitchen table. DataCore Solutions was suing me for $2.4 million. The lawsuit alleged breach of fiduciary duty, theft of trade secrets, and tortious interference with business relationships. 47 pages of legal language that boiled down to one claim. I'd deliberately sabotaged client relationships before leaving and was now working with a competitor to steal DataCore's business. It was completely fabricated. I'd forwarded personal performance documents, not proprietary information. I hadn't contacted any clients about leaving. I hadn't accepted any position with Quantum yet. But there it was, in legal black and white, claiming I owed DataCore $2.4 million in damages. My phone rang. Patricia, I just got a copy of the lawsuit. Rosemary, this is a SLAP suit. A what? Strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's designed to intimidate you and drain your resources so you can't fight back. They're betting you don't have the money for a prolonged legal battle. How much would it cost to fight this? Conservatively? $300,000 in legal fees, maybe more if it goes to trial. I sat down hard in a kitchen chair. I have $93,000 in savings. They're counting on that. They've also included a settlement offer in the filing. You agree to never work in the industry again, pay them $50,000 in damages, sign a perpetual non-disclosure agreement, and they drop the suit. And if I don't respond? They're requesting a temporary restraining order to freeze your assets while the case is pending. The hearing for that is in 10 days. I couldn't breathe properly. Every exit was blocked. I couldn't work in my industry because of the non-compete. I couldn't work for Quantum without risking this lawsuit becoming worse. I couldn't fight the lawsuit because I didn't have the money. If I didn't settle, they'd freeze my bank accounts, and I wouldn't be able to pay for my mother's care. I sat at my kitchen table, lawsuit papers spread out in front of me, calculator showing impossible math, and thought about calling my mother's facility to tell them I couldn't afford next month's payment. Then my phone buzzed. Marianne from Apex Financial Group. Rosemary, we need to talk. Derek showed up at our offices today. It didn't go well. Call me immediately. I called Marianne back within 2 minutes. My hands were still shaking from reading the lawsuit, but her message injected a shot of adrenaline that cut through the fog of panic. Rosemary, thank God. Marianne's voice was tight with frustration. Derek Paulson came to our headquarters this morning for what he called a reassurance meeting. Tell me what happened. He brought Jason and 2 technical specialists. He spent the first 10 minutes telling us how DataCore's transition plan for our account was seamless and professional. Then he proceeded to demonstrate that he understands absolutely nothing about our business. I grabbed a pen and paper, taking notes out of habit. What did he say specifically? He proposed replacing our custom integration layer with their standard package. Rosemary, you and I spent 8 months developing that custom solution because our infrastructure is unique. The standard package won't work. When I explained this, he told me we were overthinking things and that most clients are happy with the standard solution. He said you were overthinking. His exact words. Then my technical team asked specific questions about the security protocols we'd discussed implementing in Phase 3. Derek had no idea what they were talking about. He literally turned to Jason and asked what Phase 3 was. Jason fumbled through some vague answer about reviewing the project timeline. I closed my eyes, seeing the disaster unfold. What else? Derek dismissed our concerns about the timeline. We have a product launch in 3 weeks that depends on this integration working perfectly. He said 3 weeks was plenty of time and suggested we might be creating unnecessary stress. Rosemary, this launch represents 18 months of work and $7 million in development costs. If it fails because the integration doesn't work, we're looking at catastrophic losses. I'm so sorry, Marianne. Don't apologize. None of this is your fault, but I need to know something, and I need you to be honest with me. She paused. Where are you going? Who are you working with now? I looked at the lawsuit papers on my table. It's complicated. I have a non-compete agreement that prevents me from working in the industry for 18 months. DataCore is also suing me for $2.4 million, claiming I sabotaged client relationships. Silence on the other end. Then, that's absurd. You built those relationships. You're the only reason we stayed with DataCore as long as we did. I appreciate that, but legally, I'm in a difficult position. I can't work for a competitor. I can't even advise a competitor without risking making the lawsuit worse. What if we terminated our contract with DataCore for cause, based on inadequate service and failure to meet contractual obligations? My heart started pounding. I understood immediately what she was suggesting. If Apex terminated for cause, it wouldn't be because I'd interfered. It would be because Derek had demonstrated incompetence. It would be entirely Datacorp's fault. Marianne, you need to do what's best for Apex. But I can't be involved in that decision. You're not involved. I'm telling you what we're considering based on Derek's performance today. I'm informing you as a professional courtesy because I value our relationship. Her voice was firm. I'm not asking your permission. I'm telling you what's happening. We ended the call carefully, both of us aware that everything we said might eventually be reviewed by lawyers. I sat staring at my phone, mind racing. Over the weekend, my phone didn't stop ringing. Saturday morning, Tom Bridgewater from Bridgewater Manufacturing. Derek and Jason had visited their facility on Friday. Derek had told them the custom reporting features I'd spent months developing weren't necessary, and that they should use the standard reports to save money. Those custom reports were the entire reason Bridgewater had chosen Datacorp over Quantum in the first place. Saturday afternoon, Rachel Cordova from Cordova Health Systems. Jason had told them their security concerns about HIPAA compliance were paranoid, and that Datacorp's standard security was sufficient for healthcare applications. Rachel was the chief compliance officer at a major hospital network. Suggesting she was paranoid about federal healthcare privacy regulations was professional suicide. Sunday morning, Stephen Palmer from Pinnacle Retail Group. Derek hadn't returned 7 urgent calls about a critical implementation problem that was causing their point-of-sale systems to crash intermittently. 7 calls over 3 days, all ignored. 4 major clients. Combined, they represented $28 million in annual revenue for Datacorp. Every single one asked me the same question. Where was I going, and could they follow me there? I gave them all the same careful answer. I had a non-compete agreement and legal complications. I couldn't advise them on their vendor decisions. They needed to do what was best for their companies. But what they heard, correctly, was that I was trapped, and they were on their own. Sunday evening, I called Thomas at Quantum. I'd been holding his business card all weekend, turning it over in my fingers, weighing impossible options. Thomas, it's Rosemarie. I need to talk about your offer. Good timing. I was about to call you. I heard Derek visited several of your former clients this week. How did you hear that? Industry contacts. People talk. Apparently, it didn't go well. I made a decision. If I was going to do this, I needed to be direct. 4 major clients are considering terminating their contracts with Datacorp. Apex Financial, Bridgewater Manufacturing, Cordova Health Systems, and Pinnacle Retail Group. They've all reached out to me. They all want to know if I'm available. That's $28 million in annual revenue, give or take. But Thomas, if I coordinate this in any way, Datacorp will claim I orchestrated it, and they'll win their lawsuit. I could lose everything, and potentially face criminal charges for tortious interference. Unless the clients terminate for legitimate cause based on Datacorp's incompetence, which would be entirely Derek's fault. That's a very fine legal line, but it's a line that exists. His voice was thoughtful. Here's what I'm thinking. You accept the consulting position. You start Monday. You don't contact any clients directly. You don't encourage anyone to leave Datacorp. You simply work on general training and strategy for our team. And if the clients decide to leave Datacorp and approach Quantum on their own, then they're making an independent business decision based on service quality. You're not involved in that decision. You're just here, working on unrelated consulting projects. It was risky. It might not hold up in court, but it was also the only path forward I could see. I'll take the consulting position, 75,000 annually, while we challenge the non-compete. But Thomas, we need to be extremely careful about documentation. Everything needs to be above board. Agreed. Come in Monday morning. We'll start with the basics. Keep everything clean. After we hung up, I sat with my decision, feeling both relieved and terrified. Monday morning, I drove to Quantum Systems and signed the consulting agreement. Thomas introduced me to the client services team. We spent the morning discussing general client management philosophy. I was careful to keep everything theoretical, nothing specific to any DataCore clients. At 2 in the afternoon, Derek's assistant called my cell phone. I didn't answer. At 2:30, Marianne from Apex sent an email to DataCore's executive team with me copied. Effective immediately. Apex Financial Group is terminating our contract with DataCore Solutions for cause due to failure to meet contractual service obligations. We will be pursuing alternative vendors. At 3:15, Bridgewater Manufacturing sent a similar termination notice. At 4 o'clock, Cordova Health Systems. At 4:45, Pinnacle Retail Group. 4 termination notices in under 3 hours. Combined, they mentioned the same issues: inadequate service, lack of expertise, failure to meet commitments. All 4 mentioned they were evaluating Quantum Systems as a potential alternative vendor. My phone exploded with notifications. Text messages from former colleagues at DataCore. Emails from other clients asking what was happening. A voicemail from Derek himself, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. You orchestrated this. I know you did. You poisoned these relationships before you left, and now you're destroying this company. You're going to prison, Rosemary. Our lawyers are going to bury you. I saved the voicemail. It might be useful evidence of harassment. That evening, Patricia called. DataCore just filed an amended lawsuit. They're now suing for $8.7 million and requesting an emergency injunction to prevent you from working anywhere in the industry. Can they do that? They can request it. Whether a judge grants it is another question. The hearing is scheduled for Friday morning. 4 days. 4 days. And Rosemary, there's something else. I got calls today from 3 of your former team members at DataCore. They want to quit and join you at Quantum. My stomach dropped. Who? Marcus, Sarah, and Jennifer. They're loyal to you, and they're miserable under Jason's management. But if they leave, it's going to look like you orchestrated a mass defection. Derek will use it as evidence in the lawsuit. I thought about Marcus, who'd been my assistant for 3 years. Sarah, who I'd mentored from an entry-level position. Jennifer, who'd told me I was the best manager she'd ever had. I need to tell them to stay. Can you do that? Tell people to stay in a toxic environment? I can't let them ruin their careers because of loyalty to me. Derek will go after them too. They're young, they have student loans and rent and futures. I won't let them sacrifice that. That night, I texted all 3 of them the same message. I appreciate your loyalty more than you know, but you need to stay at DataCore. Don't make yourselves targets. This will pass. Only Marcus responded, no. Tuesday morning, I arrived at Quantum to find 3 news vans in the parking lot. I sat in my car, staring at them, trying to understand what was happening. A reporter noticed me and started walking over. I drove to a different entrance. Thomas met me at the side door, his face grim. Someone leaked the story to the business press. It went live an hour ago. He handed me his phone. The headline read, Software Executive Accused of Corporate Sabotage After Salary Shaming Incident. I read the article standing in the hallway, my coffee going cold in my hand. The piece painted me as a disgruntled employee who'd retaliated against DataCore by systematically stealing clients. It included quotes from anonymous DataCore executives calling me underperforming and overpaid. It mentioned the $8.7 million lawsuit. It suggested I'd been planning my departure for months, methodically poisoning client relationships so they'd follow me. None of it was true, but it was published in a respected business journal and would be read by everyone in the industry. My phone started ringing. Former colleagues, industry contacts, reporters wanting comments. I turned it off. Thomas guided me to his office and closed the door. Our PR team is drafting a response, but I need to be honest with you. Our board is nervous. One member suggested, we terminate your consulting contract to avoid the controversy. I understand. My voice sounded flat even to my own ears. I told them no. We're not abandoning you because Derek is playing dirty, but we need to be prepared for this to get worse before it gets better. That afternoon, DataCore's lawyers filed their emergency motion for a restraining order. The hearing was scheduled for Friday at 9 in the morning. If they won, I'd be prohibited from working with Quantum, contacting any clients, or even discussing the industry with anyone. They were trying to silence me completely. Patricia called at 4 o'clock. We need to prepare for Friday. Do you have evidence that Derek's actions were retaliatory? Proof that the clients left due to his incompetence, rather than your interference? I have my performance reviews. They're all excellent. I have thank you notes from clients. I have the non-compete agreement. I have Derek's voicemail from yesterday where he threatened me. That's helpful, but not enough. We need testimony from the clients themselves about why they left. We need documentation of Derek's failures. We need evidence that contradicts DataCore's narrative. How do we get that in 3 days? I don't know. But without it, you're going to lose on Friday. Wednesday morning, I forced myself to go to Quantum, despite wanting to hide in my apartment. I spent the day working on training materials for their client services team, trying to pretend everything was normal while my professional life collapsed around me. At 2 in the afternoon, Marcus appeared in the doorway of the small office they'd given me. What are you doing here? I asked. I quit. Effective today. And I have something for you. He set a laptop and a thumb drive on my desk. Marcus, no. Go back to DataCore. You can't do this. It's already done. I turned in my resignation this morning. Jason tried to talk me out of it. Then Derek himself called me into his office and threatened me. I recorded that conversation, by the way. It's on the thumb drive. You recorded Derek? This is a one-party consent state. I'm allowed to record my own conversations. He opened the laptop. But that's not the important part. Before Derek's assistant locked down access to client files yesterday, I downloaded records of every client interaction since you left. Every email, every meeting note, every complaint. I stared at the screen as he pulled up folder after folder of documents. Look at this. Email chain with Apex from last week. Derek promised a solution timeline, then missed every deadline he set. Here's one from Bridgewater, where Jason told them their concerns weren't important. Here's 7 unanswered voicemails from Pinnacle over 3 days. He clicked through more files. And this is the best part. Recording from a DataCore executive meeting last Thursday. Someone left the recording system running. He played an audio file. Derek's voice came through clearly. I don't care if we lose a few accounts short term. We need to show that Rosemarie wasn't essential. Let them complain. When they realize she's not coming back, they'll settle down and accept the new structure. My hands were shaking. This proves Derek deliberately let the accounts fail. It proves he's an idiot and a terrible leader. Marcus pulled out another document. And this is the presentation he used to humiliate you in that meeting. I found the original file on the shared drive. His speaker notes are still embedded in the document. He showed me the notes section. Derek had written, "Make an example of her. Show everyone that no one is untouchable. Establish dominance early." He'd never researched market benchmarks. He'd made up the numbers to justify cutting my salary. It was all deliberate, calculated humiliation. "Marcus, this evidence could destroy DataCore's entire case against me." "I know, but you obtained it by violating your employment agreement. If we use this, they'll sue you into oblivion." "I'm aware of that." I looked at this young man who'd worked for me for 3 years, who I'd mentored and promoted and trained. He was 26 years old. He had student loans from his MBA program. He had an apartment and a car payment and a girlfriend he was planning to propose to next month. "I can't let you sacrifice yourself for this. You gave me my first real job out of graduate school. You taught me everything I know about client relations. You went to bat for me when I made mistakes. You convinced the executive team to promote me when everyone else thought I was too young." His voice was steady. "I'm not watching them destroy you with lies when I have proof of the truth." Patricia arrived an hour later to review the evidence. She spent 2 hours going through every file, every document, every recording. Finally, she looked up. "This is a silver bullet. This would win the case instantly. Derek's notes prove the salary presentation was retaliatory. The meeting recording proves he deliberately sabotaged client relationships. The email chains prove the clients left due to incompetence, not interference. But using it destroys Marcus. Yes. DataCore will sue him for theft of proprietary information, violation of his employment agreement, and probably a dozen other things. He'll be unemployable in this industry. He'll spend years in court and probably lose everything." Marcus sat across from us, his jaw set. "Use it." "No." I closed the laptop. "We're not doing this. Rosemarie, you'll lose on Friday without this evidence. They'll get the injunction. You won't be able to work. You'll lose your house, your mother's facility, everything. And you'll lose your future. That's not a trade I'm willing to make." Patricia looked between us. "Then you need to tell me how you plan to win on Friday, because I'm out of ideas." I spent that night lying awake, staring at my ceiling, thinking about impossible choices. My mother, who called me 3 times last week, not remembering who I was. My mortgage payment, due in 8 days. Marcus, willing to sacrifice his career for loyalty. Derek, smug and certain he'd won. At 3 in the morning, I made my decision. I called Patricia and left a voicemail. "We're not using Marcus's evidence. We're going to beat them another way." I just had no idea how. Friday morning arrived cold and gray, matching my mood perfectly. I met Patricia outside the courthouse at 6:30, both of us carrying briefcases and the weight of a case we probably couldn't win. "Did you come up with another way?" Patricia asked. "No, but we're going ahead anyway." She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. We had our evidence. My performance reviews showing 7 years of excellent ratings. My thank you letters from clients. The non-compete agreement that seemed excessive. My testimony about the salary presentation and the humiliation Derek inflicted. Derek's threatening voicemail from Monday. It wasn't enough to prove that the clients left due to DataCore's incompetence rather than my interference, but it was all we had. DataCore's legal team arrived at 7:30. 4 lawyers in suits that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. They rolled in carrying 3 boxes of documents, projecting confidence and unlimited resources. Derek was with them, looking polished and professional. He'd probably practiced his testimony, rehearsed his concerned executive routine. He caught my eye across the courthouse lobby and smiled. Actually smiled. The hearing began at 9 o'clock in courtroom 3. Judge Harrison was in his 60s, gray-haired, with a reputation for being methodical and fair, but impatient with frivolous arguments. Datacorp's lead attorney was Catherine Walsh, a woman in her 40s, with a reputation for aggressive corporate litigation. She stood to present their case, and I watched my professional life get dissected for the second time in 2 weeks. Catherine laid out Datacorp's argument with surgical precision. I was a disgruntled employee who couldn't handle professional criticism. When Derek rightfully addressed compensation issues, I retaliated by resigning without notice and deliberately destabilizing client relationships I knew were vulnerable. She presented charts showing Datacorp's revenue decline since I left. $4.2 million in lost contracts over 2 weeks. She argued this dramatic drop proved I'd orchestrated the client defections. Then she played a recording that made my blood run cold. It was my phone call with Marianne from Apex, the one we'd had last Friday. Someone had recorded it, probably from Marianne's company phone, which was technically legal but felt like a violation. My voice came through the speakers. I have a non-compete agreement that prevents me from working in the industry for 18 months. Datacorp is also suing me for $2.4 million. Marianne's voice. Where are you going? Who are you working with now? My voice. It's complicated. I have a non-compete agreement. I can't work for a competitor. Catherine paused the recording. Your Honor, this demonstrates that Miss Williams was discussing her non-compete and her future employment with a major Datacorp client just days before that client terminated their contract. She was clearly laying groundwork for client defection. Judge Harrison looked troubled. I felt Patricia stiffen beside me. Catherine continued for another 20 minutes, building a narrative of corporate sabotage and unethical behavior. When she finished, our case looked hopeless. The judge called a 30-minute recess. Patricia and I sat in the hallway. She didn't say anything, but I could read her expression. We were going to lose. I put my head in my hands, trying to think of something, anything that could turn this around. Then I heard running footsteps. Marcus appeared, breathless and disheveled, his shirt untucked like he'd been running for blocks. I did something, he gasped. I couldn't let you lose. Marcus, what did you do? He pulled a folder from his bag. Last night I contacted all 11 of your former clients, not to ask them to support you, just to ask them one simple question. Why did you really leave Datacorp? He handed me the folder. Inside were sworn declarations, signed and notarized, from 6 different companies: Apex Financial, Bridgewater Manufacturing, Cordova Health, Pinnacle Retail, Silverstone Technologies, and Garrison Pharmaceuticals. They all agreed to submit statements to the court. I opened the first declaration from Apex Financial. It was 3 pages detailing every mistake Derek made during his site visit. The technical incompetence, the dismissed concerns, the inadequate solutions. It included email evidence showing they'd complained to Datacorp management before terminating their contract. Bridgewater's declaration described Derek telling them to abandon features they'd specifically contracted for, with documentation of the original contract terms. Cordova's statement detailed Jason calling their security concerns paranoid, with email chains showing their repeated attempts to address HIPAA compliance issues that were ignored. Pinnacle's declaration included phone records showing 7 unanswered calls to Derek over 3 days about a critical system failure. None of the declarations mentioned me by name. They were purely factual accounts of DataCore's service failures after I left. Patricia grabbed the folder and started speed reading through declarations. This is admissible. This is recent evidence directly relevant to their claims. I can file this right now. Do it. She practically ran to the clerk's office to file the declarations as supplemental evidence. Catherine Walsh saw her and followed, arguing loudly that surprise evidence should be excluded. When court reconvened, Judge Harrison had the declarations in front of him. His expression had changed. Catherine objected strenuously. Your Honor, this evidence was produced at the last minute without proper disclosure. It should be excluded. Judge Harrison read through the declarations in silence for 5 minutes while everyone waited. Then he looked up. Miss Walsh, these are sworn statements from 6 companies detailing service failures at DataCore Solutions subsequent to Miss Williams' departure. They appear to be directly relevant to your claim that Miss Williams orchestrated client defections. They're an obvious attempt to manufacture a defense. They're dated and notarized yesterday evening. They include substantial documentation, emails, phone records, meeting notes. Unless you're suggesting 6 major corporations coordinated to commit perjury overnight, I'm inclined to admit them. He turned to Patricia. Miss Hoffman, you may proceed with your case. Patricia called Derek to the stand. He was sworn in, looking confident. She started with simple questions, establishing his timeline at DataCore, his role, his responsibilities. Then she held up Bridgewater's declaration. Mr. Paulson, did you visit Bridgewater Manufacturing on Thursday, November 2nd? Yes, as part of our client retention efforts. Did you tell them they didn't need the custom reporting features specifically outlined in their contract? Derek hesitated. I suggested they could achieve their goals more efficiently with our standard package. Features they'd spent 6 months developing requirements for and had contractually agreed to receive. I was trying to find cost savings. Did you have technical expertise in their manufacturing systems? I have general industry knowledge. So, no specific expertise in automotive parts manufacturing and supply chain integration. Not specific, no. Patricia moved to Cordova's declaration. Did you tell Cordova Health Systems that their security concerns about HIPAA compliance were paranoid? I didn't use that word. What word did you use? Derek shifted in his seat. I may have suggested they were being overly cautious. About federal healthcare privacy regulations they're legally required to comply with? I was trying to move the project forward. Did you ignore 7 phone calls from Pinnacle Retail Group over 3 days about a critical system failure? I was prioritizing multiple urgent issues. More urgent than a point-of-sale system crashing and preventing a major retailer from processing transactions? Derek didn't have a good answer. Judge Harrison leaned forward. Mr. Paulson, help me understand something. You've accused Miss Williams of sabotaging client relationships, but these declarations paint a picture of organizational incompetence after her departure. How do you reconcile that? Your Honor, she poisoned these relationships before leaving. The clients were predisposed to be dissatisfied. Then why do these declarations cite specific failures that occurred after she left? Missed phone calls, dismissive responses to technical concerns, contractual commitments ignored. None of these things happened while she worked there. Catherine tried to recover. Your Honor, the timing is suspicious. 4 clients terminated within hours of each other. That suggests coordination. Judge Harrison looked at the declarations again. Or it suggests that multiple clients, receiving similarly inadequate service, made similar decisions in a similar time frame. Miss Plassels and of Los. Walsh, do you have evidence of actual communication between Miss Williams and these clients after she joined Quantum Systems? We have the recorded call with Apex Financial, where Miss Williams explained she couldn't work due to her non-compete. That's hardly evidence of solicitation. He closed the folder. I'm denying DataCorp's motion for emergency injunction. Moreover, I have serious concerns about the underlying lawsuit. Both parties should seriously consider settlement discussions before this proceeds further. Catherine's face went pale. Derek looked stunned. We left the courthouse at noon. Patricia was smiling for the first time in days. We won the battle. But the war isn't over. They can still pursue the lawsuit, I know. But something shifted in there. That afternoon, my phone started ringing again. But this time, it was different. 5 more clients submitted termination notices to DataCorp. Silverstone Technologies, Garrison Pharmaceuticals, Westfield Logistics, Hartford Analytics, and Meridian Systems. Word had spread through industry circles about the court hearing, about Derek's testimony, about the service failures. By Friday evening, DataCorp had lost 11 major clients in 11 days. Their revenue had dropped by approximately 51%. Thomas called me at 6 o'clock. The Quantum Board met this afternoon. They want to offer you Chief Client Officer immediately. $350,000 base salary plus equity. We'll cover all your legal fees moving forward. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt exhausted. What about the lawsuit? DataCorp hasn't dropped it. Not yet, but they will. They have bigger problems now than suing you. Their company is collapsing. That night, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Miss Williams, this is Sandra Morrison. I'm chair of DataCorp's board of directors. We need to talk. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? This needs to end now. Saturday morning, I met Sandra Morrison at a small coffee shop in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where no one would recognize us or care about corporate drama. Sandra was everything Derek wasn't. Measured, thoughtful, with 30 years of building and running successful companies. She'd founded 2 tech startups in the 90s, sold both for substantial returns, and now served on multiple boards, including DataCorp's. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. The board voted last night to remove Derek Paulson as CEO, effective immediately. We're installing an interim CEO while we search for permanent replacement. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup, processing this. You fired him. We should have fired him 2 weeks ago when this started. We should never have hired him in the first place. She looked tired. The private equity firm that acquired majority stake 6 months ago pushed for his appointment. They promised he'd streamline operations and increase profitability. Instead, he destroyed the company's most valuable asset in less than a month. Client relationships that took years to build and days to demolish. The board reviewed the court declarations from yesterday. We talked to clients directly. What Derek did was catastrophic. Why are you telling me this? Sandra leaned forward. Because DataCorp is facing potential bankruptcy if we lose more clients. We've lost 51% of our revenue in 11 days. Our stock price has dropped 40%. We have vendors threatening to stop shipments because they're worried we can't pay. We're in crisis mode. I'm sorry your company is struggling, but I'm not sure what you want from me. I want to make you an offer. Come back to DataCorp. Name your price. Full control of client relations. Derek is gone. You'd report directly to me as board chair until we have a new CEO. We'll give you whatever you need to rebuild. It was tempting in a way I hadn't expected. To go back, vindicated. To prove I'd been right all along. To return to the company I'd helped build. Now, on my own terms. But then I thought about sitting in that conference room 2 weeks ago, My salary on the screen, 19 faces staring at me while Derek systematically humiliated me. I thought about the lawsuit papers, the threats, the deliberate attempt to destroy my career and my life. I thought about the fact that Datacorp's board had hired Derek in the first place, had let him operate unchecked, had allowed this entire disaster to happen. I appreciate the offer, Sandra. But no, she didn't look surprised. Can I ask why? Because the company that could hire someone like Derek is a company that has fundamental problems with its culture and decision-making. You gave him power to make an example of people. He chose me, but he would have chosen someone eventually. That's not a place I want to be. Sandra nodded slowly. That's fair. Then let me propose something else. We need to unwind this situation cleanly, for both our sakes. She pulled out a document from her briefcase. Datacorp will drop all legal action against you immediately. We'll pay your legal fees, $200,000. We'll release you completely from your non-compete agreement. And we'll issue a public statement saying you left due to philosophical differences with management, fully absolving you of any wrongdoing. In exchange for what? A mutual non-disparagement agreement. You don't talk publicly about what happened. We don't talk about it either. No admission of wrongdoing from either side. Clean break. I thought about it. No more lawsuit. No more legal fees draining my savings. Freedom to work anywhere without the non-compete hanging over me. Public vindication. I want one more thing. Marcus, Sarah, and Jennifer, my former team members who left Datacorp. I want their non-competes released too. Done. Anything else? That's it. We shook hands. Papers were drawn up and signed that afternoon. By Sunday evening, it was official. The lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, meaning it couldn't be refiled. My non-compete was void. Datacorp issued a brief statement about my departure being amicable and based on different visions for the company's future. Monday morning, I walked into Quantum Systems as their chief client officer at $350,000 annually, plus equity that could be worth millions if the company continued growing. Thomas had already hired 4 of my former team members. Marcus became my director of client operations at nearly double his Datacorp salary. Sarah and Jennifer joined as senior account managers. Within 2 days, 8 of my former clients officially signed contracts with Quantum, Apex Financial, Bridgewater Manufacturing, Cordova Health, Pinnacle Retail, Silverstone Technologies, Garrison Pharmaceuticals, Westfield Logistics, Hartford Analytics. The contracts were worth $34 million annually. Thomas called an all-hands meeting to announce the new accounts. The office erupted in applause. Quantum's revenue had increased by 43% in 2 weeks. I stood there, surrounded by my new team, in offices that felt more innovative and alive than Datacorp ever had, and realized something. I'd been forced out of a situation that was comfortable but ultimately limiting. Derek's cruelty had freed me to find something better. 3 months later, Quantum negotiated to acquire Datacorp's entire client services division. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The company that tried to destroy me ended up selling their core operation to my new company. My mother's care was fully funded. I bought a small house with a garden where I could actually relax on weekends. I paid off my car and started sleeping through the night again. But the thing that meant the most happened 6 months after everything fell apart. I was invited to speak at the National Women in Technology Conference in Chicago, a gathering of 3,000 women working in software, engineering, and tech leadership. The organizers had read about my story through industry coverage and wanted me to speak about workplace challenges and resilience. I stood backstage, more nervous than I'd been in any client meeting, listening to the moderator introduce me. When I walked out to the podium, the room was packed. 3,000 faces, most of them women who'd probably experienced their own versions of workplace humiliation and injustice. I told them my story. The salary presentation, the public shaming, the impossible choice between pride and financial security, the lawsuit designed to crush me, the clients who stood up for truth, the evidence that almost cost Marcus everything, the final vindication that came from refusing to compromise my integrity. Then I got to the part that mattered most. Here's what I learned from the worst month of my professional life. People will test your worth, sometimes publicly, sometimes cruelly. They'll try to reduce you to a number on a spreadsheet, a line item in a budget that can be cut or optimized or eliminated. But your value isn't determined by someone else's limited perspective or their need to feel powerful by diminishing you. I paused, looking out at all those faces. Your value is proven by what you build. The relationships you nurture through years of showing up, doing the work, caring about outcomes. The expertise you develop through late nights and difficult problems and lessons learned from failures. The integrity you maintain when everything is stripped away and all you have left is who you are when no one's watching. A few women in the front row were nodding. When someone tries to humiliate you, they often reveal more about their own insecurity than your inadequacy. Derek didn't display my salary because I was overpaid. He did it because he was threatened by my relationships with clients, by my expertise, by my credibility that he hadn't earned yet. He wanted to establish dominance. What he actually established was his own incompetence. Some people in the audience laughed, but it was knowing laughter, recognition. So here's my advice, and it's not easy advice. Walk away from people who don't see your worth. I know that's terrifying when you have bills and responsibilities and people depending on you. I know the security of a paycheck feels irreplaceable. But staying in a place that devalues you will cost you more in the long run than leaving ever could. I thought about that Monday morning, 2 weeks after Derek's presentation, sitting in my kitchen with lawsuit papers and impossible math and no clear path forward. Find the people who do see your worth. They exist. Thomas at Quantum took a risk on me when I was unemployable and broke. Marcus risked his career to give me evidence I refused to use. 6 clients put their names on sworn statements defending me when they could have stayed silent. Those people exist, and they're worth holding out for. I saw women in the audience wiping their eyes. And never, ever let someone else's cruelty define your value. You know what you bring to the table. You know the late nights and the solved problems and the crises you managed and the growth you created. You know your worth even when spreadsheets and salary presentations and people who've been around for 3 weeks say otherwise. I paused, feeling emotional myself. Sometimes you have to be willing to eat alone until the right people show up to the table. Sometimes you have to walk away from everything you've built and trust that you can build something better. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you opens doors you didn't even know existed. I wrapped up with the practical outcomes: Quantum's growth, Datacore's collapse, the acquisition, my new role, the team I'd rebuilt, the clients who trusted me enough to follow me to a new company. But the real victory isn't the salary or the title or the vindication. It's knowing that when someone tried to destroy me, I refused to let them. I made choices based on integrity, even when those choices seemed financially impossible. I protected people who were loyal to me, even when using their evidence would have saved me. I walked away from comfort rather than accept humiliation. I looked out at 3,000 women and spoke the truth I'd learned. That's the person I want to be. Not the person who wins by any means necessary, but the person who wins by being someone I can respect when I look in the mirror. And if you remember nothing else from my story, remember this. Your dignity is worth more than their approval. Your integrity is worth more than their validation. And your future is worth more than their permission. The applause started before I finished the last sentence. It built like a wave, 3,000 women standing, some crying, some smiling, all of them recognizing something in the story that resonated with their own experiences. After the speech, women lined up to talk to me. They shared their own stories of workplace injustice, of bosses who diminished them, of moments when they had to choose between security and self-respect. Many of them were still in those situations, trying to figure out what to do. I didn't have easy answers for them. Every situation is different, but I told them what I believed, that they were stronger than they thought, that their skills and expertise were portable, that companies who couldn't see their value didn't deserve them. 3 months after that conference, I started a mentorship program for women in tech who were navigating difficult workplace situations. We met monthly, virtually, sharing advice and connections and job leads. I helped 12 women leave toxic environments and find better roles in the first 6 months. Marcus expanded the program to include men who were facing similar situations. We called it the Professional Dignity Project, and it grew beyond anything I'd imagined. As for Derek, I heard through industry contacts that he never worked in enterprise software again. His reputation was destroyed not by anything I said publicly, but by his own actions, and the paper trail of incompetence he left behind. Companies do reference checks. Board members talk to each other. Word gets around. I never mentioned his name in any public forum. I didn't need to. My success was the only response necessary. Datacor eventually recovered under new leadership, but they never regained the market position they'd held before. They became a cautionary tale in business schools about how quickly bad leadership can destroy organizational value. Quantum, meanwhile, became one of the fastest-growing enterprise software companies in the sector. My division was our most profitable unit. The equity I'd been granted was now worth enough that I could retire if I wanted to. But I didn't want to retire. I loved the work. I loved building relationships with clients who valued expertise and integrity. I loved mentoring young professionals and helping them navigate their careers. I loved proving every single day that the value Derek tried to diminish on that screen was real and lasting and unshakable. A year after everything happened, I took my mother to lunch at her favorite restaurant near her care facility. She was having a good day, one of the increasingly rare days when she remembered who I was and could follow a conversation. "You seem happy," she said, studying my face across the table. "I am happy, Mom. You weren't, for a while. I could tell, even on my bad days." "No, I wasn't. But I am now." She squeezed my hand with her frail fingers. "I'm proud of you. I don't always remember why, but I know I am." That moment, sitting across from my mother in a small restaurant on a Tuesday afternoon, meant more than the salary or the title or the vindication. It meant I'd protected what mattered most. Her care had never been interrupted. I'd never missed a payment. Through everything, I'd kept my promise to take care of her. The house I bought had a garden, like I'd always wanted. I spent Saturday mornings there, hands in the soil, growing tomatoes and herbs and flowers. It was meditative, restorative, completely different from the high-stakes world of enterprise software negotiations. Sometimes, kneeling in the dirt with sun on my back, I thought about that Monday morning when I walked out of Datacor's conference room. How terrified I'd been. How impossible the path forward seemed. How certain I was that I'd made a catastrophic mistake. And I thought about how wrong I'd been about what was possible. The best revenge wasn't destruction. It was building something better than what I'd lost. It was proving through actions, not words, that my value was never defined by someone else's limited perspective. It was learning that sometimes losing everything is actually the beginning of finding what you're truly worth. So, let me ask you something, because I think this matters and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever faced a moment where someone tried to diminish your worth or value, either publicly or privately? Maybe it was a boss, a colleague, a client, or even someone in your personal life. How did you handle it? Did you stay and fight, or did you walk away? And looking back, do you think you made the right choice? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every one of them, and I think sharing these experiences helps all of us realize we're not alone in facing these challenges. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today to find the courage to make their own difficult choice. And if this story resonated with you, if you saw yourself in any part of my journey, I'd be grateful if you'd hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and maybe find the encouragement they need in their own difficult moments. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more stories about real workplace challenges, career resilience, and finding your worth, even when others can't see it. We share new stories every week, and I promise each one comes from a place of authentic experience and hard-won lessons. Finally, share this with someone who might need to hear it. We all know someone who's struggling with a difficult boss, a toxic workplace, or a moment where they're questioning their own value. Sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is let people know they're not alone and their worth isn't determined by someone else's cruelty or ignorance. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. And thank you for believing, as I now deeply believe, that our dignity and integrity are worth protecting even when the cost seems impossibly high. Take care of yourselves, value yourselves, and remember that the right opportunities and the right people are worth waiting for, even when you have to walk away from everything to find them. I'll see you in the next story.